And welcome back to New York Sports Wicker Media. I am Watsu-K99. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And hey, it is July 31st, the year 2022. It's my favorite day of the year because it is my birthday. And it's an interesting day for a sports fan to have as their birthday because traditionally, July 31st is the day of the baseball trade deadline. And I've had a few good trade deadline birthdays. I've had a few lousy ones. On one extreme, you have Yoenis Cespedes. On the other extreme, you have Scott Kazmir for Victor Zambrano. Pretty much polar opposites as a Mets fan. So what we're going to do today, it is the Sunday Sports Sermon. I have a few things on my mind. I have a list for you today. The list is going to be my top 5 non-New York athletes. So my favorite athletes that never played for a team that I specifically rooted for. So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the episode. But first I want to talk about the Jets and I want to talk about the Mets. So it's been 4 days of practice at training camp in Florham Park for the Jets. A couple of things I wanted to point out that are grabbing my attention. Here's what's getting the most interest from me. Denzel Mims got off to a fantastic start, but what do we really make out of this? What do we take from it? He caught 4 or 5 targets in his first day back, as I talked about on my previous video. Since then, not a whole lot. He's made a few catches here and there. So, it's really how do you look at it? I guess if you're a Mims supporter, you're getting excited about it. If you're a Mims doubter, you're looking at the last couple of days. At the end of the day, I'm not asking for Denzel Mims to dominate training camp because no matter how good he does, his role is only going to get so large with this receiving core. With Garrett Wilson, with Elijah Moore, with Corey Davis, and with Braxton Berrios, barring injury, of course. So, for me, if he just becomes a player who gets maybe 15 snaps a game, 10 to 15 snaps a game, gets a couple of targets, but is able to, when he's running a pass pattern, he can actually make a difference and hold on to the ball, well then you have something that you can work with. So even if it's just an occasional contribution from Denzel Mims, I would actually consider taking that at this point. Rashard Davis, I am very excited about him. The Jets just keep getting Davises. They used to have Jared, now they've got Corey, they've got Ashton, they've got Rashard. It's a lot of Davises out there. So his speed, I think, is going to become a weapon for this team. I'm thinking Davis is going to be my dark horse to make this roster. He had a 70-yard end-around touchdown. Do you remember some of the times last year when the Jets would run an end-around and they typically lose 5 to 10 yards on the play? Rashard Davis has a chance to be that player who steps onto the field maybe 3-4 times a game. He might only see the ball once or twice, but he might be able to make a really big impact in the right spot. I got a feeling Davis is going to do something. I think he could, if all works out as it could, he could be something of a cult hero for the Jets. I think this could happen. I am so excited about Corey Davis also. I've been on the Corey Davis bandwagon. I've been defending him ever since the Jets signed him. I defended him through the drops. I defended him through the injuries. I defended him through the fumble against New England. Well, he's come back into camp after playing only 9 games last year. He has dropped at least 10 to 15 pounds, and what can I say? He's caught 2 red zone touchdowns already. So there are a lot of people who are already convinced that Corey Davis will be cut after the season to save money. That very well may be true, but I am just saying don't be so quick to cut this guy. He's still very young. He's still very talented. And for a franchise that has been bereft of talent at so many key positions for so long, if we wind up with 2 years of Wilson, Moore, and Davis and Berrios, my goodness, why would we not want to keep that in place? Especially when you see what some of these other wide receivers are making now. Now it's routine to pay a number 1 wide receiver $20 to $25 million. I'm thrilled to have Corey Davis at 13. Bryce Huff, I want to talk about defense for a second here. 2 sacks so far. I've also been a big defender of Bryce Huff through his back injuries last year. He came back. He was never quite the same. I really think Bryce Huff may be the best or second best pure pass rusher the Jets have, along with Carl Lawson. I don't know about Jermaine Johnson being that player just yet. I think he's a little bit better as a run defender. I think some aspects of his pass rush game still need to be polished. Jacob Martin, I will say, is the one wild card in that. Jacob Martin, I haven't seen a whole lot, but everything that I've heard has been incredibly positive that he can be a fantastic situational pass rusher. Well, I think that him and Huff could be two absolute studs on the defensive line as pass rushers. So I really think that Huff is going to make this team the way that he is going right now. I don't think Vinny Curry is going to make the team. It's going to be tough to keep both Bryce Huff and Michael Clemens. But this is a team that relies on their pass rush. So I think it's going to be 10 defensive linemen. And the more that I think about the 10 defensive linemen side of it, then it's like, well, now they have Quan Alexander at linebacker. At some point, you need to reduce the position down. So I think Bryce Huff, put it this way, Bryce Huff knows that he's on the clock. Not that he isn't talented, but they brought a lot of new pieces in, and they're going to want to give those new pieces every opportunity they can. But if Bryce Huff plays how we have seen him play, it's going to make it very difficult for the Jets staff to cut him. So I guess the way I would sum up Bryce Huff is I could see him being cut, but it would really, really hurt if that's what it came to, just because he's the victim of a numbers game. And, I'm very happy to see Jeremy Ruckert is expected to be activated from the non-football injury list this week, is what I'm hearing. It could happen as soon as this week. And at that point, you pretty much have everything right where you would want it. This roster would be about as complete as we could have ever expected it to be. So I am very pleased to hear that. I wanted to point out one other football story before we move on here. You know, when we were talking about a lot of the mock drafts, I was talking about it with Green Bean, with Jeremy, with Dom, and we would talk about these different players the Jets could go after. We were thinking about kicker. You know, they already had Eddie Pinheiro in place, but, you know, unless you have Justin Tucker, you want to bring in another kicker for some competition. Cade York from LSU was the main kicker that we had talked about. But one of the other guys I heard mentioned in the chat was a guy named Andrew Mevis. I think the only reason for this was because his last name rhymes with Revis. I can't think of another reason why. So I was going through one of the local newspapers, and I saw Mevis had been cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I checked it out, and it turns out he nearly hit a sideline reporter and one of the Jaguars analysts in the head with some of his errant kicks. And believe me, they were not standing near the goalpost. His kicks have been so bad, so god-awful, that he was cut this week already in the first week of camp. Now, he was not a draft pick, but still, that says something about your scouting. That is just so off that you had to cut a kicker in the first week. So if you were looking at Andrew Mevis as a potential Jet, if you wanted a new kicker, if you did not want to bring in a veteran like Greg Zuerlein, this is the kind of guy they could have drafted and or signed, and safe to say it did not work out for the Jaguars. So another bad decision by a franchise that makes a lot of bad decisions. Okay, let's flip the script and let's talk a little bit of baseball right now. As I'm recording this, the Mets are playing the third game of their series in Miami, down at whatever the stadium is called this week. Just thank God the home run structure is not inside there anymore. Mets leading 7-3. The offense has been fantastic. 16 hits through 7 innings. Every starter has had at least one base hit. In fact, they got to that spot by the third inning of this game. Offense is really heating up in time for that big Braves series that starts this week, the 5-game series in Atlanta. Starting pitching has been amazing. The ERA of starting pitchers for this team since July 1st is under 2.5. So as much as a lot of people talk about how the Mets offense has basically gone into the tank since June, the starting pitching has held the fort, and that's why the Mets have not, they've been able to hold water and maintain their division lead, the starting pitching. So right now they're up 3 games on Atlanta. It may be 4 by the end of the day. It is 7-3 in the third inning. The last I checked the Braves-Diamondbacks score, it was 0-0 over there in the, I'll do a quick check here. Yep, looks like we're in the bottom of the 8th in that game, and it is still 0-0. So, yeah, it's nice that the Diamondbacks are kind of holding fort a little bit, but, yeah, Merrill Kelly. Oh, Merrill Kelly. Yes, that's the Diamondbacks got him in Atlanta, the Dansby-Swanson trade, when they made that terrible trade. The Braves got one good year out of Kelly, and they got a bunch of good prospects, one of which was Dansby-Swanson, and a couple of other players too. So, but he is doing well today against Atlanta, 7 shutout innings. Now the D-backs have brought in Ian Kennedy. All right, so let's see where this goes. Tuesday night, well, it's going to be interesting. Tuesday night, Jacob deGrom will be pitching for the Mets for the first time this year, first time in over a calendar year. It will be at that concrete, one of the uglier stadiums I have been to in terms of recent stadiums, known as Nationals Park. At least they have a few statues outside, but yeah, not the best thing about Nationals Park is the view. Beyond the center field wall, they've now built a bunch of apartments, and you can see a couple of government. Well, you can see the government buildings. The apartments they have a whole new renovated area. Is the Navy Yard behind the stadium behind home plate, but you still get some good views of some different buildings. But in terms of what's in the park, there's really nothing too exciting over there. I had Ben's Chili Bowl. I'm a bit of a food guy, which is why I fit into this group so well. But I tried Ben's Chili Bowl, which is very famous. So it's if you've never had it, it's a half beef, half pork smoked sausage, and they top it with mustard, chili, and onions. I got through about half of it, and I literally thought my stomach was going to drop out of my body onto the floor. It was so heavy, so brutal. I mean, if I just had the smoked sausage by itself with some mustard and onions, I think that would have been okay. But the chili, when I hate sandwiches when you put chili on it and it makes everything soggy and it's all falling apart. Next thing you know, you need a fork to go. I mean, it's just a mess. So, yeah, Nationals Park, not my favorite place. I guess that's why they needed to bring in Shake Shack to help settle things down. But deGrom will be pitching on Tuesday. I am planning to be in attendance, so I'm very excited. Hey, maybe I'll even, if I could do it, I'll do a live video. Maybe on my way to the game or from my seat. We shall see. And I wanted to give a little props here to Starling Marte. I've known about him for a while, being a good center fielder. I never appreciated him, and I wanted to take the time on this video to give him his respect. He had the game-winning hit last Sunday night against the Yankees. Then he went, or actually not last Sunday night, but this week he had the game-winning hit. Then he goes 3 for 5 on Friday against the Marlins. He fell a double short of the cycle. His home run tied the game. His single won it. For the season, he's hitting .301, 11 home runs, 46 RBI, 825 OPS, made the All-Star team, an absolute threat to steal bases. The best base-stealing threat the Mets have is Starling Marte, especially with Travis Jankowski DFA'd. And even though Brandon Nimmo does have a good amount of speed, he just doesn't steal bases. And with, when you have Marte, Lindor, and Alonso hitting right behind you, I mean, why take the risk if you don't have lights-out speed? So I wanted to give some respect to Marte for right now. So let's go ahead and go to the list. So like I told you, I'm going to count down my top 5 non-New York athletes. I'm going to go from 5 to 1. Just tell you about what it is about them that has appealed to me over the years, what I like about them, and just why they're memorable for me. So number 5 for me is not a superstar, not one of the best players of all time, but he was a player I always wanted the Mets to acquire. When I played baseball, I was always the speed guy. I always played defense. I loved to steal bases because I'm 5'8", and back then 165 pounds. I was not hitting many baseballs over the fence. So Kenny Lofton was one of my favorite players back then. He played for 12 teams, stole 622 bases, but it always felt like the teams that he were on for a long time, they were always in contention, always in the playoffs, and he was always the table setter. It's like every time you'd watch the playoffs, it felt like for 10 years, there's Kenny Lofton. So I wish the Mets could have had him. Number 4 is Donovan McNabb. I grew up really a Syracuse sports fan. I'm not really a Syracuse fan anymore. Ever since they switched from the Big East to the ACC, it's never been the same for me. But I was always a big fan of McNabb. He was like the first really dual-threat quarterback that I remembered watching as a kid. Watching the Syracuse games, he was such a threat to run, especially inside the Carrier Dome, and he could seemingly throw the ball anywhere he wanted. I wish for the sake of his career, though, he had not been drafted by Philadelphia. I think that franchise, that city, that town, those fans were as hard on him as any other fan base could be, maybe along with the Jets. I think if he had been in just about any other city, I think he would have been even better than he was. I really believe that. But I'm going to throw a couple of stats at you as far as McNabb's career. 3,459 career rushing yards. That's 8th all-time among non-running backs. He had, for his career, over 30,000 passing yards and 200 passing touchdowns, plus 3,000 rushing yards and 20 rushing touchdowns. The only other three quarterbacks to do that at the time, Fran Tarkenton, John Elway, and Steve Young. So I was always a big fan of McNabb. I'm glad he got his jersey retired by Philadelphia. Hopefully, it's one of those things you don't appreciate what you have till it's gone. Like a Patrick Ewing for the Knicks. I think that McNabb was the same way for Philadelphia. Number 3 is going to be Patrick Kane, hockey player for the Blackhawks. Living in Chicago for 20 years like I did, I was there when the Blackhawks franchise was in the absolute doldrums. Maybe a typical game at the United Center in the early to mid-2000s would get 9,000 people a night. It was not very hard to get a seat. I could get a seat in the United Center, the bottom of the 300 section. I could get a seat there for maybe, I don't know, $30, $25, $30, probably $35 after fees. But yeah, you could get in really, really easily to those games. And as such a big, being the Rangers fan that I am, they would only play the Blackhawks once every year, maybe every other year, because the East and the West weren't playing each other that much at the time. So it was always a big deal for me to be able to go to those games. But in 2007, they drafted Patrick Kane with the first overall pick. And since then, he and Jonathan Toews have completely turned that franchise around. 430 goals, 1,180 points, 3 Stanley Cups. He has averaged nearly a point per game in the playoffs. Plus, you got to admire that he goes to the mullet, come playoff time. Some hockey players go with the playoff beard. Kane goes to the playoff mullet. And at this point, the Blackhawks are in the middle of a complete teardown. They are trading literally everybody. They are acting like the Florida Marlins at this point. If you're a good player, goodbye, you're out the door. They traded Alex DeBrincat, who was pretty much their top young scoring forward, and they're just trying to get draft picks and strip this thing down to bare minimum, build it back up. So the question is, will Patrick Kane, who's going into the last year of his contract, will he be traded? I don't think it's going to be to the Rangers just because they don't have the salary cap space. If they did, they'd have to trade like a Jacob Trouba and Artemi Panarin. It would have to be an even exchange of salary. And to me, to do this for Patrick Kane, who has 1 year left, it just doesn't make sense as much as I would have loved him to have been a Ranger. I got to say, even when he was playing for Team USA in the Olympics, if you remember those USA jerseys that had like the USA going diagonally, it almost looked from a distance like a white Rangers jersey. And on the back, it would have the Kane 88, and it looked like Rangers colors. And I got to admit, that always got me. It's like, oh my gosh, he's this close to being a Ranger. So definitely a big Patrick Kane fan. Not a Chicago sports fan at all, but I'm a big admirer of Kaner, as they like to call. Number 2 is going to be Kurt Warner, NFL analyst, quarterback with the Rams, the Giants, and the Cardinals. So, okay, he played, 9 games with the Giants before Eli Manning came along. I know I said non-New York athlete. He was there for 9 games, and he was a Giant, and he wasn't a Jet. So I'm gonna have to give me a little grace on that, would you, please? Thank you. But Kurt Warner did not start in the NFL till he was 27 years old. Most of us know the story. Was stocking grocery shelves, played in the Arena Football League, got a chance with the St. Louis Rams. Trent Green tears his ACL in training camp, and Dick Vermeil declares Kurt Warner is going to be our starting quarterback. Well, he only won 2 MVPs, made 3 Super Bowls, won one of them that year, and let's just say that worked out pretty well. He played for a lot of years, played 12 years in the NFL. Plus, I also really admire him as a man. I really admire his faith and the kind of person that he is. He's just a good example for pro athletes. Oh, and he's a huge Zach Wilson fan. He loves my boy Z-Dub. So, hey, he's also very intelligent, apparently, as well. So I hope Kurt Warner is right. But so that's our 5 through 2. My number 1 athlete who did not play in New York, I would have loved to have seen play in New York, Barry Sanders, running back from the Detroit Lions. I admired his class and grace so much. I've never seen a running back like him. He had everything: the power, the speed, the anticipation, the intelligence, and he had the great attitude. He was so good, he made the Detroit Lions relevant. I can't think of a better accomplishment than that. He made the Lions not suck for a while. He led them to their only playoff victory since 1958. Think about that. The Lions have won 1 playoff game since 1958, and Barry Sanders is basically the reason why. They haven't won, I think it was 1991. That year they lost to the Washington Redskins. Oh, I'm sorry, Commanders in the NFC Championship game. So Yeah, ever since then, it has been a trend. 31 years without a playoff victory. I can't even imagine. We think we have it hard as Jets fans, but to think 3 decades without even a playoff win, it's just unbelievable. And you know another thing with Sanders, I'm not going to get into all the stats. It's very easy to do, but he retired, as we know, rather young after basically a decade in the NFL. When he retired, did you know he voided $21 million in both between salary and endorsements? He forfeited so much money to walk away, and he actually stayed retired. I think I have more respect for him for that than I do just about anything else. You know, because certain athletes, once they retire, it might behoove them to stay retired. Tom Brady. So that's my 5 through 1 countdown for non-New York athletes. If you have any ideas for a list for a top 5 countdown you'd like me to do, send me a comment. Just drop it in there, and hey, maybe I'll do it. So that is your Sunday sports sermon for July 31st, 2022. I will try to head to the Mets game on Tuesday, as long as I can get the half day off from work. I should be able to. I will be driving up to 3 hours to D.C., and who knows what kind of content we might have. So again, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you back from the Wicker Chair. Take care, guys.